he has no problem with each one. Like he say a lot of time what people get. So I was gonna ask him a question that if he goes to court and the whole court is white and he goes to court against white person, but he knows that white person is wrong, and then they all side with their own race to get him off the hook, and they put you with a crime. Would you also like that? Because everybody gotta look for their own, right? That's a question.
That would be systematic racism. I don't know if y'all gotta understand it's a difference in systematic racism and what all.
Question to everyone out here.
All right, so at the end of the day, every black person in America knows that if you go to court and you get an all-white jury, you probably gonna lose. We already know that because systematic means the system is set up for you to lose and the other side to win. The other side that governs the system are white.
But they actually just came out.
Listen.
Hey, fuck you, Pepe.
At the end of the day, no matter what we do, even if we marry a white woman, we still on the bottom side of the card, bro. Like, she doesn't actually elevate us, especially if we gotta go to court. The only way a white woman is gonna elevate you is if you see her to do your business.
How long? I'm sorry, guys. It's nothing. I meant in ways. I just want to ask the people out here, my black fellows, how long were you in the slavery for? How many years? Can anyone ask? Can anyone answer that? Can anyone answer that?
It's been almost 150 years.
Yeah, that's
So,
fake.
White people.
How many years?
about 140 something.
And that's still how, are you talking till date? Or are you talking till, what was the date till now? This is vague, right? So listen,
The reality is, listen, bro, I'm trying to answer your question as closely as possible.
You got the exact
I don't got the exact number, but we know
started in
that white families had 3 generations
1665.
of what? Okay, so that's 3 against the blacks, right?
Oh,
Captivity. That's 3. That's
That's whiny, bitching bullshit. I mean, it.
bro.
Hold on a second.
We were unified. Don't do it.
I know, but I was gonna diss. There was data studying it. Look at jurors. Okay, so white jurors, so black jurors are obviously more like whites. Okay, all right. Let me finish.
No, I'm saying is in your mic is like super loud. I know PP is just being PP.
Like Pepe, I mean, you may just want to turn down the decibel level, but
Okay. I'm trying to talk normally.
put over the
So, all right. Black people are more likely to find whites guilty than blacks, and they're far more likely to let their own off. Whereas white people, they, if I recall correctly, they're slightly more likely to let black people off than their own. But overall, they don't show any in-group. They're basically the one group that does not show an in-group preference when judging somebody. So I don't really buy this.
well, I mean, if I can push,
And I think that you also, in but you guys also go to court.
Focused on some an example and said like if I went in front of a jury full of white people and I knew that they were going to convict me because I was black, would that be considered racism? Because I said I don't mind white people putting their race first, because I'm gonna put my race first too. And that's where that conversation came from. I just don't want to.
Would you be okay with that though? I mean, if you have a system everybody has to live under, it's one thing to be for your people, but it's a one thing to weaponize your system, the system that everyone has to share against one group of people or other groups of people. Then it starts to be. That's when I think it kind of. I personally wouldn't be a fan of that. Because at the end of the day, you have judges, you have juries, you have people that are part of every community.
Weaponize with what?
What?
Well, if I could,
Black people weaponizing everyone. What the fuck are you talking about?
I don't know what you talking. We don't know what you're talking about. We can't. You like most.
Hey, bro, let me tell you something.
Nick been trying to talk for a minute, bro.
All right, go ahead, Negro.
yeah,
That's a crazy name.
yeah. I mean,
It's Negro.
Yes, it is Necro.
No, you Negro, not. Yeah. Black, not.
Okay.
What's up, my nigga?
I'm not gonna tell it.
I'm just joking, bro.
Yeah.
In the chat, Negro. Or Negro.
Yeah. So basically, what was shown is that black people are more likely to be struck down from jury duty. It's roughly around a quarter of white people who are struck down from jury duty, while over 50% of black people struck down from jury duty. And the conclusion of the people who did the studies was, I think it was from the University of Michigan that did the studies.
And what demographic, Necro, was that done? Was that a national demographic or a particular urban demographic? Can you be clear on that? There's a big difference. Have you ever seen a jury trial in Detroit or in Philly? You might have an all-black jury, a black judge, a black DA. So it's a little different than do it in the middle of Iowa. So you got to be clear on your demographic.
Well, yeah, I understand that it could be different. That's why.
Completely different.
Like, I understand there's things like the OJ trial where like two-thirds of the jury was black. So I'm definitely aware that you can have it skewed every day, but to me it was just like the question that the people who put the challenge was put forward is what is the way that you can explain if race was
Right, but think about the odds that you have a trial in, I'll take Philly because I know it, in a city like Philly, the odds are pretty good you're going to have a black judge, you're going to have a black jury, and there's a pretty good chance you're gay, and maybe your public defender also. So, now you white defendant. So I'm switching the tables on that and get the statistics of that in it.
Well, I live in Kansas. Be a bunch of white people.
Shit, and they not. What I was gonna say about Philly.
I'm in Wichita.
But I can tell you if you were
But I understand.
Baltimore, if you were in Gary, Indiana, if you were,
Indiana.
right. So everywhere is going to be different. But when he gives a study, you have to be really clear on your study when you read those.
It's clear. He said it
Yeah.
was
So
in
is
his
that Detroit?
I don't know why y'all being so combative with her. I ain't gonna lie to you. She on point with what she saying.
Hey, I kind of do this a little bit before living. Like I've seen juries.
As a Midwesterner, I want to say Wichita is pretty similar to the rest of the country. It's about 50 to 60% white, about 11% black, and then Hispanics and others. It's very similar to the U.S. I just want to throw that in there.
Not
Anyway.
similar to, but mother a little different than like a city like Baltimore or Philly, which doesn't have. I mean, the population is different in terms of black, white, and Hispanic. I mean, I don't know. You can look at the demographics of take Detroit. I mean, you said Michigan. What's the Detroit?
But I think it's
I understand. I would assume majority black, right?
Yeah,
I think
majority black. I think it's 87% African American.
Michigan, right? You're in Michigan.
Yeah.
But other cities too, like Flint and
Flint is
what the other big
majority
cities?
black. Yes.
yeah, I mean the university. I mentioned I mentioned it was the University of Michigan that did the study, but it was across multiple different court systems.
Coco is 75% black.
But I don't know the specific courts, but
Maybe it changed
across
from the last time I checked it.
in the national study.
Okay, so Ferguson, Missouri was what? It was that city chances that percentage of the black people are more, but the people that works in the system, police and the courts and all that, they're all white. But what
Well, wasn't that on the
found out?
outskirts of St. Louis, which is one of the blackest fucking cities in the country?
No, but they found people giving tickets and jailed and fines and all that. Like they know they're talking about black people. What else?
By example, in Minneapolis, after they had the riot, after the Georgia riots, there was a incident where a guy was charged with murder for throwing a Molotov cocktail or device into a pawn store as an act of anger, during the riots. And he ended up in front of a black woman judge in the case, and I put it in the chat. And although it was recommended for him to have certain sentencing, she reduced the sentence and he killed. To add that in, someone was murdered as a result of him at the building, a father of a few kids, and with something very, very limited on sentencing because of the new judges that are in Minneapolis. So, I mean, again, you also have to look at who the judge is in a case and whether they've gone through CRT training in law school, and that affects outcomes also of cases. I mean, there's just a lot of other factors other than just the jury.
Okay, cool. So I'll research.
If I'm finding the case, I'll put it in the chat.
Hold on. Let me just read this to y'all. I put this in a search, right, in Google, right? Jail population of Detroit says black people are significantly overrepresented in the Wayne County, Detroit jail system, being 3.5 times more likely to be incarcerated than white people. While blacks or black residents make up 15% of Michigan's population, they constitute 30 jail inmates. Hold on. Black people, I said that already. Disparity in bookings. Black people are over 1.7 times more likely to be booked into jail from the 36th District Court serving Detroit, and 5.2 times more likely from other Wayne County courts. Now, in Wayne County, which includes Detroit, the population is significantly more diverse, approximately 37% black and 47% white non-Hispanic than Detroit city limits. But the jail population disparity reflects black residents. So that means at the end of the day, people are being put in jail more than white people.
Well, reciprocity, if I can push back on that, I'm not dismissing. Well, hold on, Pepe, hold on. So, like, if I can push back on that reciprocity, I'm not, I just want to keep in mind, I'm not dismissing the fact that there is definitely a racial disparity. But do you think that that is proof that's exclusively due to them being black as opposed to things like socioeconomic factors that are associated more often with African American families?
So you're saying because we're poorer than whites, we go to jail more than whites?
Well, yeah, because I mean you're more or less likely to be able to, hold on. Well, like if you're poor, you're less likely to be able to afford, right?
Agreed.
And so there's plenty of.
Wait a minute, lady. We coming to
Y'all
an
are talking about
understanding.
my city, and y'all probably ain't never been there.
We're talking about statistics.
No. Okay, great, wonderful. I don't care. I've actually lived in Detroit majority of my life. Like, it's what
So, like for example.
Bam. And this isn't like just like a one-on-one conversation.
Not going off
I'm not gonna moderate it.
Like,
Like,
Oh, you being a good boy.
And
if I could just finish unpacking what it is. So specifically, like there are also conditions that poor neighborhoods are also associated with higher crime areas, and going to over-occupy neighborhoods that tend to be poor, and so it is going to disproportionately affect people in those
Okay, well,
neighborhoods.
That's wrong.
And so
Yeah, I think
it is
that's
something
wrong
I
study.
think there's a
That's
racial
wrong.
component.
there is some truth in that. There is some truth in that. But I'm gonna be real with you. Look, bro, I grew up in Detroit. Look, I don't give a fuck if I hurt anybody's feelings like this. My city I come from is crime ridden. Okay, so a lot of these people that did get fucking locked up have done heinous things. So I really, this kind of argument right now, it's crazy. I think you're, yeah, I think he's like liberal, fucking, Detroit was one of the most violent cities for decades, and this is for a reason.
they're always be overrepresented in the jails and prison system. They commit a disproportionate amount of crime. So the fact that they're 3.5 times more likely in that state is like, of course they would be. Why wouldn't they be? If the job is for them to incarcerate criminals, and black people are disproportionately criminal in comparison to other groups, then there would be a disproportionate amount of blacks there. That's just
So you mean
logically how.
So wait. He's saying that black people generally commit more crimes than white
As a whole population, so if you get 100, let's say you get 100 black, I'm gonna make this super simple. If you get 100 black people, and you got 100 white people, maybe 25, let's just 25 of the black people will be criminal, but 5 of the 100 out of 100 of the white people will be criminals. That would mean there's like a 5 times over. So you would expect to see that even if there's a smaller population of blacks, but it's a reality.
I think if I were to like push back on that, like I also think the over policing thing does skew the numbers of that. I mean, I'm not saying that crimes are real, but the thing is the fact that conviction rate happens more if you're lower income, which is something that African Americans do disproportionately have, and so of course.
Sure, would not last a fucking streets of Detroit because you have no idea what the fuck you're talking about.
But I do want to say this. This is funny because there is. I'm sure you guys have all heard the 1350, where it's at, the real stat is actually worse. In like 2020, 2021, and it was more like 1360. But that's 13% of the population. 60% of the murderers were black. No, that's awfully funny. I mean, only 13%, but they're 5 times overrepresented when it comes to murder. That's quite a shocking thing. Now, with the over-policing, nobody's been able to sell me on the argument that is because they get caught, that somehow causes murder. You don't pull someone over and find murder, in their car or in their pants. There's a report of gunshots or a dead body, and the police then investigate. Then that's that. And so,
white people get away with murder all the time.
No, and here's the
Right,
thing,
they do. They go to jail.
Math problem. This is a math problem for you. We also know the race and ethnicity and sex of the victims. Do you know what the overwhelming majority of victims are of homicide in the U.S.?
Here, bro, you got the numbers.
They're also black. They tend to kill each other at astronomical rates in comparison to white.
Why, bro? Yeah, it's the why to everything, bro. And I understand where you coming from, and I do agree with you that, niggas be killing each other a little bit too much for me, for my liking. But, and I ain't gonna lie, man. I'm gonna just shut up, never mind. No, I mean,
they can tell the truth.
In order for us to address and bring the crime actually get to the point of, you know, the actual problem? Where is it actually?
Because I'm gonna tell you,
Tom, you feel me? Like, I may have been wrong. Thank God I didn't have to do any type of, shit. Or thank God I never got caught with what I did. Real shit. But, man, like, I feel like a lot of them guys, and, I talk to them guys still to this day. They feel like they do that shit, man, for survival. And I feel like it's another thing where we want to talk about systems, right? And it's the systematic reason why black people do and they are. And I feel like pay, but it takes away from your points if you really want to get talk about the why.
are you saying who created the conditions? You know what I'm saying?
Why?
Because it goes
Wake it up.
It goes against the fascist agenda, right? You see how Pepe? Hold on. You see how quick Pepe was. Hold on. You see how quick Pepe was ready to go to the stats. He had the stats on hand. He probably had them on the back of his hand. But what I'm saying is to go into who created the conditions, who flooded cocaine into the neighborhoods, who did the redlining, who did the zoning, who voted?
Black people did that.
Hold on. Who voted to get certain funding to certain school districts and stuff like that, right? So it's systematic in that way. At the same time, black people can take some personal responsibility for airing the gangster spirit that we got from the Italians. Hold on. That we got from the and the Irish. Hold on. We married spirit. We were just selling nickel and dime weed here and there, right? But when they flooded, when the mafia, when the government, right?
Yeah, they did not the ones who
Hold on.
All right.
They flooded the neighborhoods, the black neighborhoods, right? With cocaine.
They're not the ones who initially flooded it. No, they're not the ones who initially flooded it.
Hold on.
Yes, no, I'm aware of the Iran-Contra affair. The crack epidemic was in full swing by that time. It was not started by the government.
And that's what Gary went, and that's why if you go see the film Kill the Messenger, it'll tell the whole story. Gary West, what
it's not how it started.
Now listen. They'll never talk about who created the conditions. That's fine. Do is know what happened. And at the same time, like Coco said, we need to take some personal responsibility, right? Because if we were still moving tribal, like Africa, or if we were still moving in unison, taking care of each other like the Jewish people, we wouldn't have them.
When were these conditions created? What decade?
On one hand, we can look at the
Since the founding.
Since the founding.
No, when were the cocaine?
80s.
No, so
Well, okay, but
It was 80s.
Then how do you explain the crime difference in the 50s?
Listen, we were just linked. We weren't big time drug dealers.
shit.
Okay? Until
You guys were never big time drug dealers. I mean, that's kind of part of the problem. Is the Italians, at least they could make their money doing crime, and what would they do? They'd buy legitimate businesses. They'd pay off a bunch of corrupt fucking cops, bribe politicians, do all kinds of sleazy things, and they got their greasy little guinea hands and just do what these grease balls do.
Well, they have the even though they have some racism.
No, they're just a lot smarter. They're just a lot smarter, more sophisticated. Oh, yes, they are. Yes, they are.
They have culture. They have family.
This shit is true.
All the way back to Italy. And
No shit. And they're used to living, having their own little, shadow government that under occupation. That's kind of, they've always been that way.
Anybody that's connected to their culture, Nigerians, anybody that's connected, they do well. Asians, anybody that's connected to something.
Yeah, but Nigerians, we only select, they're brain drain immigrants. They're not representative of, that's representing only the cream of the crop of Nigeria, not regular
The Italians
Nigerians.
already had a culture of family, right? And they're doing the same shit people are doing now. They did that back then. They just had suits on. And they just kissed
had people that were basically, you had white neighborhoods, ethnic neighborhoods that were like Irish or whatever, white trash ethnic group from Europe that would live in ghettos. And, you know, in the 1800s, there were places in New York were very dangerous to go into. There's very good likelihood you get beat up or robbed and that kind of stuff. The Wild West, the Old West, I mean, they had like a murder a day in Dodge City. You know, a lot of thuggery going on. I get it, and yes, it is true that like urban poverty tends to be more violent than, you know, more rural poverty, which is where generally poor whites and poor Native Americans tend to live in rural areas. But even when you start like adjusting for variables like or accounting for variables like income, children who grow up in the highest income bracket, those black boys are still more likely to commit murder and go to prison than white boys that grow up in the lowest income bracket. And I'm using boys because boys, the study showed boys, and boys, of course, are the ones who disproportionately commit these crimes in comparison to women.
Yeah, so, I mean, I've heard you say this before, Pepe. So, you have evidence that whites that report white kids in Appalachia or Barstow, California, that they're doing less crime than rich black children?
Oh, yeah.
Do you have any idea?
They're more less likely to go to prison.
Oh, so, like, crime is...
Yeah, it goes back decades. It's something that back when New York Times was not as, I mean, they were always liberal, but I mean, they would post it. Fuck, who else? It's a bunch of groups did it.
Yeah, do you have the data?
Yeah, they're old articles.
These are two different environments. If you take poor white kids from urban communities, I'm sure that number would be much different than poor white kids from rural communities. Because
And then if we talk about the kids, that's the poor white kids that's in rural communities, kind of like how Ohio is. Maybe that's probably why Ohio has an opioid crisis. Kids out there are doing drugs.
Yeah, but you're tying that into like overt criminality. I would say that substance abuse, although you have to acquire drugs illegally, you know, I guess, you know, there's some criminality involved, and people often resort to stealing to support their drug habit or prostitution. Sure, but it's not. In a way, I kind of tie drug addiction. It's also largely a public health issue as well.
He's trying to narrow it down into where black people lead, and so he's talking about burglary, murder. Yeah, pretty much burglary.
You can talk about theft. You can talk about all kinds of. We did not introduce crack or cocaine to the U.S. and put it in the black community. The crack cocaine epidemic was already large by that point. And yes, they did allow.
Do you know where crack came from?
I don't remember exactly.
It came from the Bahamas.
Oh, okay. I know that it was.
I'm just surprised.
People would freebase it, and then crack would do. I forget how they came up with crack, but there's a whole documentary about it.
A lot of people forget that heroin was the big thing.
That was largely a white people thing.
And well, black people were on it too, because that was the opioids. Because if you trace any of these drugs back before they became synthetic, it came from original botanists found the plant in the
Southeast Asia.
Yeah. And forget which one it is, but one of them was actually the original poppy, grinded down with like 10% synthetic.
But the government didn't. The opium's been a problem for a long time, especially with the Chinese. If you, I'm sure you've probably heard about that. But the Corsicans they were responsible for like there's like 80% of the heroin from like the 50s to the 70s coming into the United States. It was like, it's just like how the Mexicans ultimately will profit from the cocaine more than anybody else. They're the big suppliers.
So I think codeine was 90% poppy and 10% synthetic, but they couldn't keep the supply going, so they made it 90% synthetic, and I think that's what promethazine became. But by the time promethazine came out, everybody was already addicted. And so when they started drinking the promethazine, 90% synthetic, that's when they got the big guts. That's when people started dying in their sleep and stuff because they were drinking 90% synthetic and they were already hooked. So all of these things can be traced back to man's original need to connect with nature, no matter what the drug is. What happens is over time, it gets stepped on. So with the crack, they needed to expand it. So they added a bunch of bullshit to it, and people had bad reactions.
Well, I'm just going to cut through the bullshit and just give you what my real opinion is. Because I don't like it when people just vaguely poke claims. I do think that, you know, black people and white people, all of the races of the world, we've been separated at least 100,000 years. We're made up of different archaic hominids we're different from each other's archaic hominids that have been separated for far longer than hundreds of thousands of years. And we evolved to be very different people. We have different rates at different problems, and we have different strengths at different rates. And I'm just going to be quite honest with you. Like, I do think that black people don't have the same traits white people have, or at least those traits aren't distributed in the same way. So I personally, if I had to really say what I really felt, I think that a higher portion of the black population is violent due to their genes. There's less intelligent people, highly intelligent people in the black community. That's why when you guys talk about like, oh, we do like the Jews. No, you guys won't, because they're a lot smarter than you guys. You know, they're smarter than you know, even white Christians on average. It's just they're different people. I think that it's unfortunate, but I don't see black people ever getting their shit together. I think you guys are living in the best place you can possibly live. I mean, that should be a plus. Black people cost the United States more money every fucking year, hundreds of billions of dollars, but they end up putting in. Like, white people keep them afloat. And I don't know, without us, your guys' lives would absolutely stop.
You're doing the why. You miss it, but no, it's so important. And then when you talk about all of
that was
You just
crazy.
lied.
Well,
There's 40 million black people, and and only a very small percentage of us are actually criminal.
But I'm saying that then, like, let's go with his shitty ass point of view of black people, right? He's still missing the why. He makes all of these points, but he talks surface level, and that's why I be on your ass, man. You gotta go deeper. If you're gonna make these points and these claims, you have to go deeper. And when you make those points in your claims, it kind of, I think I know that deep, because then it will make you sound stupid.
Well, I also
I've
just
gone
think,
deep.
like,
I've been doing this for.
well, I just also want to say, like, to me, I think that there's also the bias that essentially, and I'm not saying it's completely the thing, but there's a lot of data that's good because of the fact that there are biases and detections, like the during 420, my eyes get red as fuck. I don't smoke. My eyes do get red as fuck due to my allergies. But the police, they never, pull me over. They never, suspect that I'm smoking weed or anything like that. In fact, the only reaction I get from police are asking me, like, if I'm sick or anything like that. But, they never ask me, like, they never suspect. But I have plenty of black and Hispanic friends whose eyes are as white as snow. And they get pulled over routinely by the police. Now, that's just my personal anecdote, and you do have data people are less likely to be pulled over or suspected of doing crime purely based on their race. And they've shown this like with pullover stops. Like during the daytime, white people are less likely to be pulled over as opposed to at nighttime where, you know, you can't really see what people look like. It almost completely adjusts based on a person's race.
Well, Pepe has like a generalized Reddit view towards races.
Agreed.
To say that like black people would never get their shit together when our shit is already together. Of course, can we do better in certain areas?
It'd be appropriate for me to ask him what race is before I have a conversation with him. Because if race is really a predictor of how intelligent somebody is, or then why wouldn't I ask you what your race is?
Oh, I'm white. But I don't, and I don't think that your skin color as an individual indicates very much. I think that as a whole group, what it does show is that you can look at a picture of the whole group. And let's say maybe you have, out of 1,000 black people, out of 10,000 black people, you get maybe 2 that are smart enough to be like real academics, like in a STEM field, at like an Ivy League university. Whereas in 10,000, you know, that might be, you know, 30. I do think that you're going to see absolutely implausible and it just really silly to think that we are going to produce this same that we're capable of achieving the same outcomes as groups. And that's a lot of the fighting between blacks and whites, or the arguments, are because of the disparities in outcomes between groups. And I do not think it is possible, literally not possible, for us, for example, to ever, we can look at, especially when it comes to certain sports that require explosive speed, we're not going to overtake you guys. You guys, the traits are way too skewed in favor of people of African descent that we are not going to beat you guys at you know, sports that require explosive speed. The Chinese and the Soviets ended up figuring that out in the 1930s. That nope, there's no doping, there's no nothing we can do to outcompete them in sprint.
Not even golf.
They have too much of a God-given ability.
Not even golf.
Well, I mean, golf, I think when West Africans dominate with explosive speed. Golf is one that it takes a lot of things. I would guess eye-hand coordination, other shit. Sure, but do I think that these traits, when it comes to anything from, we know for a fact diseases do not occur at the same rate amongst groups whatsoever. We know that a lot of things are not the same. And of course, the most complex organ, and where the greatest genetic variation lies is in your central nervous system, your brain.
Which is because of what people went through.
Well, let me ask this. Why do we have Mexican wolves out here, which aren't that big? You have red wolves in the southeast. You have, the timber wolves, the big, wolves that you see in the north and in Canada. Then you have Arctic wolves, which are like these beautiful animals, and they behave a lot differently from all other wolves. They're not afraid of people. And part of that is they live way above the where people don't go to hunt. So they've never been preyed on by people. So they did not evolve to be scared of people. So they approach people, which is unheard of for a natural wolf in other areas. They all have different drives to prey on different types of animals. Wolves don't take down big bears above the tree line. All they have are like hares and small little fucking, animals to kill. Because there are no big animals up there, except for maybe they run across a polar bear occasionally. And you see the huge variation in their sizes. These are all part of the same, species of animal, but they splintered. And you look at the same thing that's human beings, and we are separated for so long. Our ancestors a lot of them had to go through extremely harsh environments. There's obviously selective pressures where people who did not have certain traits would die off, or they would not be able to mate and pass on their genes. A lot of people with different traits would, there's probably a reason why you don't have light-skinned people along the equator today. Most of them had thousands of years of having to get acclimated to that environment. And obviously it's not going to work very well being along the equator in sub-Saharan Africa with no shirt on, like a lot of these people, the tribal people. White people aren't built like that. And I don't know, it's not, to me, people like Phil was racist. It's racist. I mean, I don't know what to say. Like, are we just supposed to ignore about the animal species? What is beyond apparent and obvious with people in general? I mean, it's not just about race. We can look at Europe. We are very different from each other. There's huge differences in sizes. I mean, fuck, the climates vary a lot. I mean, do you guys really think that the Scandinavians, which are much bigger than us from more southern Europe, who had to evolve in very harsh environments, that they had the same selection pressures as people that were closer to the Mediterranean, where it's a much more temperate climate? I mean, I highly doubt that. And, it's, but I don't know, you guys can keep on thinking that, like, oh yeah, we're all seeing, it's blank slate theory. We can all become whatever, we're raised to be like, which I think is fucking bullshit.
I mean, like, you'd have to provide some sort of evidence for that debate. I mean, like, I understand that that's your opinion, but, I mean, there's no empirical evidence that's going to support
There's a lot of empirical evidence.
Okay, and hold on, you're going to make a claim, be very specific about the claim, in one sentence. What claim that you have evidence for?
Even the American Psychological Association would grant that, I believe it's between, they either use the term, it went from 40 to 60% of the differences between humans, when it comes to intelligence, they will say is hereditary.
Okay, you're citing a study, but what is your claim?
My claim is that people groups are different. In the same way that even individuals are different. You can have siblings. One sibling's a lot smarter than the other. That happens all the time. One sibling's even taller than the other. Okay, now, groups of people, there's differences. We all agree, I think, here, that the pygmy people of sub-Saharan Africa are very short in comparison to most of us. Then the Dinka are much taller than most of us.
How would these traits be passed down? If you're saying it's inherent, if it's in the DNA, is that where you're saying that it comes from genetically? That black people are more inherently aggressive than others?
I would say that I would think that there's a high likelihood that a higher percentage of the African American population is genetically violent. Yeah. Amazes me. Now, obviously, there's a different culture here, but they'll catch somebody stealing a motorbike. They'll catch somebody robbing. And what you'll see is a naked male or two or three. And you'll see hundreds of men gathered around them, women too, and children. They will beat them with sticks. They'll throw stones on their heads.
Justice.
They will beat the living shit out of them. Most of the time they end up dying, but they usually like to make sure that they set them on fire while they're alive. And I do wonder this. Maybe this is something I've pondered. I have no.
Do you consider war as violence? Because if we're talking about war and people hurting people, then that's obviously not a black person or black American overall. If we're talking about the people that hurt the move on Earth, because you're bringing it into an earthly thing, right? About you're not just talking about black Americans, you're talking about black people as a whole. The people that do the most destruction on Earth, it would have to be white people.
Even
we're the apex predators of the world, and that's what
King Leopold genocided 8.
Beam, I have more empirical evidence for you. If you want, very clear.
Yeah, make the claim first. Give me this is your specific claim, and then provide the evidence. Yeah.
Okay. My claim is that if a little kid, they say pick out the fastest player, and I'll give you a piece of candy. If you can pick out the fastest guy that can run the fastest, I'll give you a piece of candy. And there's 50 black kids out there, and there's 50 white kids. He picks a black kid. Okay. The odds are he's gonna get the piece of candy. Okay. If you look at the fastest ever recorded sprint times, 500 top 500 sprint times, 493 at one point were held by blacks. Okay. How would you explain that other than genetics?
I would probably just explain it through genetics. But we're talking about aggression. We're not talking about the way that the body is created. We're tied versus
we're especially people on the
sorry,
left.
Pepe, sorry, I'm so sorry. I don't mean to cut you off. So Beaver, you didn't provide me any claim, and you didn't give me any empirical evidence. You gave me some analogy to ask me a question.
No, I gave you a claim.
Can you state? No, you didn't give me a claim.
He did tell you that 400 and what was it, 90 of the top 500?
That's not acceptable. A proposition. Give me a falsifiable claim. Give me a sentence. What are you claiming? What is your claim? Are you claiming?
Okay, here's the
Are you claiming that aggression is genetic?
No, I'm thinking about split speed, athleticism.
We're athletically superior.
Okay, so give me that specific claim. It should be less than it should be less. You have to start over about how to formulate propositions and claims. A claim should be one sentence. That's it.
I sent it out to a little kid.
What is your claim? Subject meets predicate. What's the claim? Okay, repeat it one more time. What's the claim?
Black folk more athletic than white people.
He gave the statistics of
What is his claim? You said that you repeated it. Can you repeat his claim?
it was, I think he said 493 of the top 500.
That's not a claim. That's not a claim. That's not a claim. That's a part of the evidence. I don't want the claim. I just want.
He made a claim in the form of a question saying, would that not?
No, I want to follow.
There was a genetic cause.
Should we go through how to formulate propositions and claims?
I don't want to say no. On average, group average, blacks are faster than whites, and it's genetic. That's
Okay,
genetic. Okay, that's the famous saying: 50 kids, 50 black kids, and 50 white kids, and the kid has to pick one on random. He's gonna pick from the black group. If
No, that's not the same, Beaver. It's not the same.
I would. I'm gonna say it right now. I definitely would.
That he's have a better chance to pick from the black group.
Well, a lot of it has to do.
The problem is, like, you guys are talking about, like, anatomy to try to, like, explain aggression. Aggression is more, like, hormonal and psychological.
But that's also anatomy.
Yes, that's our nature too, though.
It's all
your brain is a physical structure.
Better at sports, you know, whether that's soccer or basketball, whatever. It's like this is not.
It's perfectly cohesive because we generally it was always very taboo to and it was always said as kind of like, yeah, I know it's the truth, but we can't really say it out loud that black people, especially in America, they're faster than us. And not everybody knows that. Black people know that. you know, nobody deep down believes that it's like, oh, it's because their environment. No, motherfuckers can run faster than us. It's just
it's the melanin.
That's how they're made. Now, the part of the reason why that claim has always been taboo is because it's seen as a slippery slope where we can start talking about other traits being genetic. And every fucking like you had the what is it, Philadelphia behavioral cohort, which had tracked kids for years and years, where they would account for every variable, like the income, where they live, is there a parent in the household, all of this other stuff. Raj Chetty did it too, a Harvard economist, just a couple years ago. His was a much larger study, but it does show that even with black males, there's really, even accounting for having fathers in the home, there's a caveat to that one though. Fathers in the home, having a decent income, there are still a lot of problems. And they academically, the variable of being black was a stronger predictor of a poor academic attainment in comparison to your peers. That one variable. It wasn't the income, it wasn't any of that. In black, you were more, even from a wealthy family in comparison to a poor white kid. It's strong of a predictor. So I don't know. I mean,
hey, can I hop in here?
This argument is ridiculous. Honestly, like, give me a couple of white girls from the ghetto, and then give me a couple of white girls from a rural area, and I can guarantee that the white girls from the ghetto are going to be violent.
No, because when you take the black boys out of the environment, they still do poorly. Now, Raj Chetty's study in particular showed one glaring difference between the so black girls, for whatever reason, didn't do quite it. So if they were let's say upper class, and they had two-parent household, black girls did better as the income of the household went up, and whether or not they were married, the parents were married, and all of that, and they would do somewhat relatively similar to the peers of girls of other races. The black boys were the standout. The black boys were a huge standout. They even so Raj, the only real data, the one thing data showed that had a positive impact for black boys was not whether or not he as an individual had a father in the home, but it was whether or not there was a high number of two-parent households in the community he so happened to live in. Maybe that's because there's less unsupervised males that could influence him. I don't really quite know what to make of it, but it does show. There's stark differences, dude. How many truly intelligent black people do you fucking see? You could count maybe a few of them, but you can rattle them up by every other.
That's a little weird because you're not at the universities. You're not at every laboratory. Like,
You're
come on, man.
adding more factors into it as we go on. Like, again, okay, like not having a father in the home. It doesn't matter what people group you are. If you don't have a father in the home as a child, you're gonna be more problematic. That's just.
It's for black boys, because what mattered more is that the other boys in the neighborhood, if they had both parents in the house, it would be better whether or not that individual black boy had a father in the house. I'm guessing it was probably because if you have a high rate of single motherhood and a bunch of unsupervised young boys, who do boys hang out with? Other boys. They're probably just gonna get into trouble. But if they all have fathers, well, their fathers generally will keep them in check, and those bad boys won't be there to introduce that boy with a single mom, to do bad shit. But even he didn't come to a conclusion as to why this is. He only got the statistics and showed where the correlations are.
aggression is heritable. And I'm just going to start it off. It can definitely be refined from what I'm going to say. But I have a nephew that has severe ADHD. There's no way you're not going to tell me that that's not aggression that he has. And there's no way you're not going to tell me that that's not inherit that from somebody in our family. It doesn't matter. From when he was little, he tried to kill his teacher, tried to literally stab her with a pair of scissors. Right? Now, we do agree that initially, like, we thought his behavior was very just rambunctious. So, you know, my uncle used to, his dad used to, like, really whoop him. You know what I'm saying? We believe that that kind of contributed more to, but either way, it was inherited. And that's not necessarily like something that's social. Now, when you take things like that, or like oppositional defiance disorder, where you just see children being defiant, like just for no reason, right? These are things that they inherit. And then you kind of start to refine it. You'll start to see that there are traits that certain groups have that express themselves more, you know, just based on who they are, where their ancestors are from, or whatever. So it's not necessarily a cultural thing. Culture definitely does play a part in all of this. It does. But aggression is definitely inherited.
To the science, and let's go to AI. Let's see what they have to say. Studies in behavioral biology.
Do you know AI is incredible? Which AI is it? Is AI? You can look at this.
Let me just...
Hold on. There's few things that they intentionally screen for. How to make weapons and things about viruses.
Okay, I'll just say, you can call it bullshit. Let me just say it, because it actually agrees with a lot of what you're saying and a lot of what I'm saying. Studies in behavioral biology suggest that in many vertebrate species, darker melanin-based coloration is positively correlated with higher levels of aggression, social dominance, and bold behavior, often linked to the pleiotropic effects of the melanocortin system. While researching animals, applying these findings to suggest racial differences in human being highly controversial, heavily criticized as racist and based on retracted science. Now listen to this. The same hormones that produce dark eumelanin pigments also act as neurotransmitters in the brain, regulating stress, social behavior, and aggression. In many bird and mammal species, darker pigmented individuals are more aggressive and dominant, often using the signal of high status, talking about, you know, being darker. Studies have found that darker correlation is associated with aggression in animals such as barn owls, tortoises, and various fish. It is proposed that the melanocortin system links melanin production with behavioral traits such as lower stress sensitivity, allowing darker individuals to be more dominant. And I'll post that scientific review. Yes, it all comes back to the eumelanin. And if you want to talk about the nervous system, Black peoples of the world have a lot of melanin in the nervous system as a bridge, right? Melanin is like a lot like Star Wars. You can nurture your melanin, right? Or you can destroy your melanin with toxic drugs and whatnot. So people with higher melanin content, the drugs, since the drugs are connected to nature, hits them a lot harder. And you can do the research on that, right? So what Pepe is talking about is right, but what he wants to pivot it to is he wants to say that white people, their genetics is that they have bigger cranium and bigger brains. That's where he's trying to go with it.
I was not making a craniometric argument about
yes, you were.
Yes, no, I never once said anything about brain volume.
You were heading there. But listen, it all comes down to the eumelanin and how much, because he wants to talk about diseases. Well, who are the people that...
You have to call
Who are the people that get the same diseases? Native Americans, white man's food, the pork and the
Sure, but I was not talking about. I wasn't talking about the differences in communicable diseases, like what you spread to each other.
That's weird.
There are diseases that so for example, I believe cystic fibrosis, which is very deadly, it primarily only affects Europeans. There's certain skin cancers that only pregnant Europeans will get.
A lot of black people, a lot of Native Americans, a lot of Asians, they get diabetes.
I think that's another one where Native Americans where I live have the highest. In fact, the ones right from me, I think, have the highest rate of diabetes in the world.
Yeah.
And they live, and where we live is I don't know how people survived here 200 years ago. It's fucking insane out in the desert. But they did. I'm sure they probably didn't eat that much, and it's probably really hard on them. And yes, I don't think they evolved to eat food the same way as us, because their bodies are like hyper efficient at storing it.
Yeah, they were eating different things. They were connecting with cactuses. They were connecting with all kinds of animals. It wasn't hybridized animals. Wasn't GMO. Wasn't like processed foods, right? But when they started introducing themselves into white culture, a lot of them started getting these diseases like diabetes and whatnot because they're eating foods that go against the melanin. Period. And I think that's the biggest thing of what's going on in the African American communities. They have not nurtured their melanin. They're putting Jack in the Box, McDonald's, NBA YoungBoy, toxic drugs, and it's having a terrible effect on the melanin.
By the way, I know a lot of people will say like drugs are about peer pressure and just say no. Yeah, I mean that's good and all, but there's a very very big genetic component for why certain people become addicts and others don't. This has been studied.
You guys are crossing things off. Like, first off, melanin does not correlate to diabetes. It doesn't determine if someone's going to be insulin resistant or not. Those correlations aren't.
You have
that people have melanin diabetes, so this must be true.
Yeah,
when in fact,
rates of it.
Okay, again, there's a lot of other factors that lead to diabetes, which you mentioned. One is access to nutrition or nutritional and dietary goals. But melanin is not the condition that affects diabetes.
Yeah, most people in the world are melanated. Now, of these different people, some of them highly melanated, they can be known for being very lean, having low rates of diabetes. Asians, which range from dark to barely dark, they're not necessarily known for having higher rates of diabetes. You for fuck's sake, look at Africans. With some Africans, not North Africans, but the black Africans, south of the Saharan Desert. You see a huge variation between these people, and even their skin color, how tall they are, which athletic abilities they have. Now, West Africans are very good at sprinting. East Africans are the opposite. They are not fast, they're not strong, but they are very good at doing endurance type of sports, and they absolutely dominate when it comes to distance running. They have they evolved from different pressures than West Africans, and you see the same thing like even in Europe. People that live in parts of the Balkans and like the generic Alps, some of the tallest people in the world. We can look at people, and you look at Europeans, you have huge fucking strong people from the Baltics and Scandinavia. They're tall, they're built. When you see a lot of linemen in the NFL, they look like they're fucking Vikings, like literally. They're these Scandinavian fucking people. When do you see these big French linemen? You don't see Spanish. There's regional variation everywhere. Quote unquote your race. That's just that's more a way to cluster groups of people on certain continents
Well, look at
with
this.
very similar
Look at this, Pepe.
features. It's not. It doesn't mean that though that everybody that's part of that race is that close. They're gonna have the same traits.
Well, look at this, Pepe. You focused on Asians, right? Well, I would focus on who have more melanin than their counterparts.
And
right?
a lot of them are good as fuck.
Diabetes in Southeast Asia is a major public health crisis with approximately 107 million adults living with the condition and 46 million cases undiagnosed. Wherever you go, look at the Australian Aborigine people, same thing. High levels of diabetes. Why? Because they got introduced to processed food, processed sugar, and the wrong
Sure, we can make it. The white man's diet doesn't work for them. I grant you that.
That's not a white
I'm
man's.
not trying to dismiss that.
This shit is sad, bro. It's not a white man's diet. If you take any amount of food and you genetically engineer it, then it's gonna impact every single person. That's the bottom line. Well, people gotta pay attention to what they put in their mouth.
Well, look, check this out. Well, check this out. And I'm not a doctor or anything, but what I know that's a factor of like diabetes, if you catch it, is if one of the factors is if your ancestors went through famine, right? So if your ancestors went through famine, they bodies evolved to basically survive on just nothing.
Can you define famine, brother?
And you show famine.
Going without?
Okay, if your ancestors lived in an era where there was no food and they were like effectively starving and surviving and surviving on very little because there's not food anywhere. Like, I mean, we could do this semantics.
Brother,
but
why is it that when you fast, your body recovers?
Well, let me finish. I'm speaking about diabetes. I'm speaking about diabetes, right? So what I'm saying is if your ancestors lived in an era where there was famine and they learned to survive or they evolved to survive off very little food, nutrients, whatever. Now, those genes effectively get down. When we live in an era where there's food everywhere, you still might have genetic traits that so you have people who have diabetes or who are really big or whatnot.
That's not how genes work.
But he is correct in the sense that if you have populations that had strong selection pressures that ended up making it so only people that had the metabolism that allowed them to get by for periods of time could survive.
Point, like if you're talking about the Nepalese people and the EDAS1 gene that they have that allows them to live, Ethiopians and Indonesian people, these individuals are able to live in lower saturation oxygen environments, and their blood is very thin. However, the Indians, out of all the groups, have the most red blood cell count that actually exists because of the environment they live in. Now, this is multi-generation. There's not really a famine that has existed for 10 generations. Like, I mean, what you're talking about is just your grandparents going through a famine is not going to alter your genes. It doesn't work that way. It's the environmental.
Yes, I agree with you on that part. In other words, this could be something that lasted hundreds, I would guess thousands, realistically, thousands of years. And,
I'm definitely not talking about grandparents. I'm literally talking about, like, ancestors, right? Like, great grandparents, right? Because I think even when we talk about ancestors and where people are actually from, I believe a lot of that gets conflated. That's another topic for another day. But what I'm saying is, if you have traits that have evolved to survive on very little, and now, food is everywhere, you can eat as much as you want, right? Your body isn't processing food the same way, right, as it has been designed to process. So I don't even necessarily, diet may have a part to play in it, the white man's diet, the enriched weed, however you want to put it, but I am going to say that depending on what your ancestors went through, famine is a factor in diabetes.
No, it's not, bro. No, it's not. Hold on for a second. Because
you can go into famine. whatever.
You can literally see it today. If you eat wheat or cheese or anything like that in America, and then you go over to like Italy and eat the same exact thing, your body is gonna respond in two totally complete different ways. It's the food, it's how the food, wheat alone. If you think about black people and how much wheat we consume on a day-to-day basis, since 1940s, 1950s, wheat has been genetically modified 70 to 80 times. So much so to the point where other countries don't even look at our bread as bread. They look at it as a chemical compound that's hazardous to people. But we don't pay attention to those things, and we go and read these studies and say, oh, well, it's because, no, it has nothing to do with that. If you deal with famine, when your body goes into a fasting mode, cellular reproduction shoots through the fucking roof. Starts to kill off the bad cells, the cancer cells, and all of this shit, and it starts to essentially colonize those bad cells and turn them into good cells and send them boys back out there in the body field to do their job. The liver starts to cleanse itself. All of the glands, all the kidneys, everything starts to cleanse itself. None of this shit lines up with reality.
It almost sounds like we're saying the same thing, because if you think about it, if you would say someone is living in an era of famine, what would they not be doing? Not eating, right?
Correct. But then when they come back into reality and they say the white man's diet is what's causing it, that's the point where I disagree. Because it's not the white man's diet, it's what niggas choose to eat. So if you go and look at the majority of niggas' cabinet, they shop the majority of shopping in the middle of the goddamn grocery store. They just bypass the red 40, the yellow 50, all of the color and chemicals and shit they put in their body, and you relegate it to the white man's diet. No, it's your choices.
Oh, no, that's true as well. So, like, what we would consider European diets or Northern European, you have to understand, they had 9 months of winter. Processed food back then was sausages, bacon, cured, salted meat dish. Which is healthy for me because, again, my labor environment was very quick farming. From spring until the first snow was all labor. It was just, if you look up north, they had to labor through all that. They had to prepare for the months of winter. Then they had to eat preserved food in some fashion, or go out and hunt live game and hope that they do it. So had to bulk multiple generations on fat, because you need fat to get through a winter. You gain winter weight and then you drop it off in the spring. That's actually a real thing, because it helps you. Even studies have found that northern people go into can go into an almost hibernate state where their body starts to reduce caloric output to conserve energy because of the long changes. So when you look further, you don't have the climate shifts, so you don't eat a lot of those preserved foods. And when you do eat off of the European and you do mix in, the same way that happens to me. If I go to Africa again today, I know I spend the entire time, every American faces this, you spend the entire time shitting your brains out. You come back, you get that stomach flu, and you think it's like Montezuma's revenge. You drink their food, and you have poor health conditions afterwards. Why? Because you changed your diet radically. Unfortunately, in historical sense, you have not changed your diet over time. It's just been short time frame, and you're still adjusting. Much like lactose intolerant people. Up northern Europeans can digest milk. Like, that's something that's just common. Mid-Africans, closer to the equator, you can't fucking do it. Most of you are lactose intolerant by the age of adulthood.
But see, Brad, the reason why most people are lactose intolerant, it has less to do with, so everybody's body produces lactase, which is the enzyme that's responsible for processing and digesting lactose. The majority of people between the ages of 9 to 12 years old, their body no longer produces lactase, which is the enzyme that breaks down lactose. So just from the baseline, if your body is no longer producing that enzyme, then when you consume that milk product, body doesn't really know what to do with that sugar, because the enzyme that's supposed to process that sugar no longer exists. So then the body has to essentially manufacture that enzyme to digest that particular sugar. Now, that's one thing. So if you think about like the body can't just flow. It can't just do because you're introducing something that's considerably foreign. Now, when you look at what has been done to the cows in this country, much similar to GMO, cows are so sick, and everything that's coming out of these cows' uteruses, where these cows are essentially what we would classify as being raped, they're literally in semen, and the things that they're being fed and the antibiotics, because we have a population in the country that puts a demand on the production of cow milk. All of that stuff goes into what you consume. Now let's look at inside the cow's milk. The majority of these cows produce a very high quantity of something that's called caseomorphine and corresponding mucus that comes with it. Now, in our country, I think the regulatory standard was like 2.5 million somatic cells that's allowed to be in our milk, which is basically mucus that we can consume. But if you go to Europe or other countries that have more stringent guidelines, I think theirs was like either 750,000 or 250,000 somatic cells per whatever type of unit that's allowed to be in this milk. So if you go to Europe, and they're basically saying, we're going to reduce the amount of mucus and caseomorphine by 5 times the amount that people would consume in America. It's no wonder why people are having issues with consuming milk and digesting the bullshit. You're consuming the drug, so just like how women produce oxytocin, which is the chemical bond that draws the baby to the mother, caseomorphine is the chemical compound that draws baby cows to their mother. And it tells them, hey, little cow, produce all of these enzymes and build up to be a cow. And then when you see a bunch of people that end up growing and being fat and things of that nature, and their body responds however their body responds, that's the reason why. So they're not counting for the regulatory compliance standards that exist in America in comparison to the ones that exist over in Europe, because if you put it apples to apples, more than likely the outcome will be the same. But because it's not, and we have more shit in our food that not only impacts black people, it impacts everybody that consumes these foods. That's why we tend to be more sick. If you look at it from a national perspective, we tend to be more sick as Americans all over the world. It's because of the shit we're consuming. It's bullshit.
Oh, and the amount. Don't forget the amount.
Oh, we ain't forget that.
And that fucking shit. Like, I'm gonna be honest with a lot of you guys. I hear what you eat on here when we talk about the nutritional thing, and I'm just blown away by what you guys consume. I'm 6'2", and I'm like 195, I think. I mean, I'm just lean and built. I'm like, I don't eat what a lot of you do when I hear you say, oh, I'm 5 feet. I'm like, holy shit. I don't eat the stuff you do. Like, I've gone out for steaks down in Texas, but generally my diet is like a handful of dry fruits, fresh fruits, another handful, and then whatever I seared or burnt over a fire. Like, I don't cook. Anybody who knows me knows I can't fucking cook shit. But I'll just burn something and then throw it. And you guys eat meat way too fucking much in amounts that just fucking your body can't take. You can't run, you can't move. That's why you have meat sweats. That's why I can smell you when I go on search and rescue missions. And I can go out to the forest. I can often smell you before I can find you because I can smell your odor, just the food that's seeping out of your pores. It's fucking,
yeah. Well, so how did you what differentiates between the way that you choose to eat in terms of the volume and, let's say, the rest of us, yeah? So how did that happen? And so what did you just go, I ain't eating and I don't want to be fat, or what was it?
When I was a kid, we had to work land, so we would spend most of the time, like I said, up north, busting our asses from sun up to down. We just, you didn't have to eat like massive amounts of, like, no one had a fucking entire roast. Like, you guys eating 22-ounce steaks. I'm like, in Texas, what do they call those tomahawk steaks? Who the fuck can devour one of those? I can't fucking eat one of those whole. Like, that'll take me a fucking month to get through that shit. Like, a deer lasts me a year. You guys, if I gave you a deer would last you a few months. You'd go through that. I'm always lost on this thing. Like, the amounts of bad shit.
Yeah, but I don't think it's about that you were poor, because I think the poor people are often the fattest, aren't they? Because they eat the which equates
not in the rural part of the world.
No, it's very different in the rural America. When you get in the Midwest, where they're farm boys, they can be poor. But those, like you said, we moved back to the Midwest after my dad got cancer, and we had to come back from overseas, and I ended up there for a year, and I saw the life of a farmer. I lived it, and when he says they're up before the crack of dawn, they're up at 5 doing chores. They're finished baling hay, doing whatever it is till the sun goes down. It is a different world, but like he says, they're more structured meals. Like he said, a 22-ounce steak. When you look at the nutritional value, depending on the cuts, but you're talking about a 6-ounce maybe cut of red meat is all you need for nutrition. But that's never enough. Everybody wants the bigger steak. Why? It's great. It tastes great, right? But that's the problem. And when they look at it and they say that red meat causes cancer, that's bullshit. When you dig into it, what happens is the charred fat of gristle around the end down to a doneness of 9, which a doneness of 9 is the char. When you hit it, the char falls off. The fat is what gets the free radicals. That's what causes the cancer. You cut that off, you don't char your steak, then you don't have the problem. But again, we go back to what he was talking about before, whoever it was, it's what they're injecting our steaks with now. That's why when you have genuine grass-fed steaks, it's a completely different price, and they're a hell of a lot healthier for you.
And so
Oh, sorry, Marcel. Go ahead.
Okay, so the only reason, you're right, we do have a choice today, but a lot of us don't really know the ins and outs, especially if you look at African Americans who are disconnected from their original culture, right? So a lot of those cultural practices, now we live white culture pretty much. We live this new culture. And so the reason why I call it European foods is because literally that's what they showed up to these places with. Now, if we look at the British when they showed up to Australia, right, and they started putting the indigenous people in camps and taking them away from their nutritionally rich wild foods, these Aboriginal people started to develop taste for beef, flour, sugar, tea, and tobacco, right? And so their diet before, which was rich wild foods, flour, white sugar, camp pies, and beer, which literally is the European diet, because that's what they showed up with.
What European diet? Because a German diet is very different than a Portuguese diet.
Yeah, also this is British. I would say British diet. Okay? And so this was unfamiliar and nutritionally incomplete food. That's what the article says. It was a health disaster that has contributed to indigenous populations having 3 times the average incidences of diabetes, twice the average incidence of heart disease, and 6 times the level of renal kidney failure as European Australians. So literally, this is their food. This is what they showed up with on the boats. And this is actually what we're all eating today in that honey bun that you buy.
But that's not necessarily true.
In that M&M's candy bar in the Jack.
But that's not what they showed up with.
You guys are eating this every single day, sometimes 3 and 4 times.
That's just absolutely false, because what they ended up showing with was salted pork, salted fish, salted meat. They had but when you look at the sea voyages there, sugars and things like that, they did have spices, and they did trade for spices because all of a sudden it was there. But in terms of salt, like, there's salt in Africa. Like, humans need to have salt in their diets in order to live. Like, everyone knows that the rule of 3, you've got 3 days on average without water, 3 minutes without air, you got like fucking, on average 30 days without food. But there's a 4th element in there. You need like 3 grams of sodium. You need salt. You need that last little piece there to live. Like, without it, you die. Period. Yes, thank you. But I mean, so like when the Europeans showed Mars bars. They didn't show up with all this stuff. They didn't have that shit. That was invented later on, and that was in America. Again, they didn't even have hybridized wheat. Like wheat. They actually imported from other worlds when they came down to like Africa. They said, "Oh, you have different wheat here. Let's go grab this." They went, dude, chill. I let you speak, and then dude, chill the fuck out, man. All right. Are we really going to do this? Are we really going to do this? Because like I'll just talk through you when you want to talk. No, you clearly don't. You said Mars bars. But then shut the fuck up and let me finish. Dude, alright, so we're gonna go through this. They didn't show up with hybridized wheats. In fact, they went there, dipshit, they went there to get the fucking wheat, you asshat. They went there to get spices and find new sources of food. That's what they were doing, dipshit. They didn't give you fucking food. They didn't give you Mars bars. They didn't tell you to fucking eat this shit. All you do is just prattle on and say it's a European thing. And here's a crazy part. You didn't have to eat it because, again, 15 people in a boat against an entire nation didn't tell you you had to eat that. There's nothing happened. What ended up happening is the and the desire went, hey, we'll take this. We'll take potatoes back to Ireland because this is a need. We'll give you these spices. And there was a trade going on. And guess what? In Africa, they have, guess what? They have imported foods too from other regions that they took in response to those trades. So no, they didn't show up with hybridized wheat. That fucking cultivation came much later on in history.
So we do need salt, like all humans need salt, right? We need sodium. But the problem with the sodium is when it's too much. And a lot of our foods have too much fucking sodium in it. Our drinks have too much sodium in them. And certain people groups do have salt insensitivities. I'm a part of one of those groups, and it has actually put me in the hospital before, and I realized, oh shit, okay, I need to pay attention to this. I didn't know sodium was going to be an issue for me. But yeah, this is something obviously that's came newer in the United States. We're just, our food is fucking shit. But I think a lot of the things that you guys are saying is we just need to realize everything in moderation, and most people are not eating in moderation.
I wouldn't even say moderation, because the facts, so I've been blessed to live on 3 different continents, and one of them was Europe, and where I lived, there were special attorneys on the west side, American side, due to the military commissaries, grocery stores, and their main job of the to allow food to come into the port from America to hit the commissaries because it's so illegal in Europe. I mean, bring the fight where the fight is. Like, food matters. We no longer use food for fuel in the States. We use it for contentment. Look at delivery apps. Like, we need to re-teach what food is and what it should be used for. And Othello, I'm so sorry, but I was not following you at all, but maybe I'm on a different path here, but like, food matters. And to be honest, I spent 1/3 of my life outside the United States. Coming back, I've never been more sick in my life. People should get angry about this. They should be.
It's about the government and the food manufacturing industry, because you do have a choice, but there's an education that has to happen before you can make the right decisions. And we've got to accept that not necessarily, more and more people are, but not everybody's going to be educated. And also there's an impact on affordability, because I think the food is the higher processed food, which is worse for you. To give you an example of action from government, so ketchup. So Heinz make ketchup for the US and they make ketchup for Europe. The ketchup for Europe is far healthier than it is for the US. And that's as a result of government intervention, and therefore Heinz were forced to. And it's better. It's still not perfect, too much sugar, but the amount of sugar in the US version is a lot higher. So there is, and this is, for me, this is where governments can impact. You don't want government ruling the world, but food manufacturing, they're focused on shareholder profit. They're not focused on what's right. in terms of health. That would be my opinion.
Have you guys ever been to mainland China or at any of the towns, like any of the cities that border where Hong Kong is, and you see, I mean, the physics of the Chinese has changed, and we've done it to them. I mean, KFC is so popular, and so is Pizza Hut, and we've changed their diet, and we've changed them physically.
It's also been hybridized rice.
When I lived in South Korea, the grandmothers there, obviously, you know, they could tell it I'm from the States, and they would be like, "You brought over Subway, you brought over KFC, look at her girl." So looks matter. They're very, and they would just be very blunt with me, like, "Look what you're doing to our girls," and it isn't because their girls, in my opinion, were not obese, yet they thought they were, you know, and guys, food just matters, and the getting food into American military bases and their commissary should say everything, like, I don't know.
But just go back to this, someone answer this, or no, because I don't know it, but, so why can our kids grow up, let's say, if you want to talk Subway or KFC, you know, and they do whatever athletics they do. I mean, I don't know if you're going to say it makes them fat, but why, when you introduce that into another culture, you know, and then maybe they're just not used to it, that all of a sudden now you have fat Chinese or fat South Koreans, or, you know, or maybe to them it is, but, you know, is it just they never had a tolerance for it and we did, or like what's the reason?
It's highly inflammatory.
Yes. Exactly. And moving back to the States, the food to me looks beige. I'm like, where are the vegetables? And people will be like, "Oh, there's a potato." Not a vegetable. And then if I talk about calories in, calories out, using food as fuel, they think I'm like an anorexic person. I'm like, no, food is meant to be a fuel. And living a stationary life also consists of that. But I mean, all the process, and I look at the puffy face, everything, and like Othello's right, like, oh.
Out of all the things, like if I had to, you know, I still gotta dive deeper into this, but if there's one thing that I would disagree with when it comes to Trump is forcing we to take our food. That would be the only thing, because it's clear that it ain't no shit. So everything else they doing it, but
You know, a big difference. We have lost thousands, millions of hunters year after year. We're really, like, to the point where Fish and Wildlife, National Forestry Service is begging for people. They're offering you free opportunities to go hunting. In fact, they're offering you free public land spots, telling you where deer are. They're tracking this because they need you to cull the herds. They need you to go out. There's conditions developing like chronic wasting disease that's affecting antlered animals. So you need to have hunters come out there. And at that time frame, when I grew up, we hunted. We ran trap lines and we hunted and we had fish. You guys like go to the store and you order like a salmon that was raised in the ocean. Yeah, when it says ocean fresh, but you should look at how they do the farm raised salmon. You probably wouldn't want to eat it. And that chemical that's sprinkled over it, you don't want to ingest that shit. Like catching wild salmon tastes a lot different than whatever you're eating in the store or the restaurant. Because I know I've tried both, and I can't stomach salmon served to me in a restaurant. It's too nasty, man. All you have to do is just catch a salmon, cook it until its eyes turn white on the beach or the bank right there, and you're good. You can just dive into it. But I mean, you're eating the wrong shit and too much of it, and it's flavored with spices, so you can't even taste what it really is to know how bad it is. If you got rid of all the seasoning and just ate it, you'd spit it right out. I'm telling you. And we would need to actually start going, hey, that bag of carrots, yeah, maybe it's altered, maybe it's hybridization nowadays, but it's still more healthier than the bag of Doritos, and it costs less. You can see it in the stores.
Brad, what's the healthiest place? You said you lived in all these different places. What do you think's the healthiest eating.
Okay, I want to clarify. Okay, technically, if we're gonna get all down to technical of science here, potatoes are a vegetable. They're a starchy vegetable, but they're not nutrient classified dense as a vegetable. The healthiest place I lived in, I want to say Japan. I lived in rural Japan up north, so of course everything was a very omega fishy dense diet. So it's very dense. However, I mean ramen isn't very nutritious, and I ate a lot of that, but that was because of my choice, not because anything wasn't available. So I'd say northern Japan.
It's definitely choice because
of the major
but their convenience stores, Abby, their convenience stores were just as bad as ours. Like they have a lot of junk food. They have a lot of.
I'd also say the Patagonia. For me, Abby, since you asked, the Patagonia region, particularly Peru, I figured was the healthiest. I actually immediately upon eating there, after a couple days, I felt better, which is why I'm going back to the Patagonia region. I never did this in my entire life in all of America, but I drank directly from the river and I have never done. I would never dare do it in the U.S., Europe, or even fucking China. I wouldn't touch that shit. Sure as shit, not touching one in India, nor Africa either. But there, it was probably some of the cleanest water I've ever had, and I didn't get like sick down there. So I would say that region was.
Do you think Patagonia, or because Peru is different? I've been to Peru and I thought there was a lot of bounty there, a lot of vegetables, but that's different than Patagonia. So you're saying all the way down?
All the way down from Peru, all the way down. I found was the best.
for me it was Honduras and Mexico. I mean, the fruit that we lust over are just growing, along the sides of the street. Soursop, mame, plums, mangoes. I was drinking coconut water fresh from the trees. But I also could have went down there and ate, fried maduros and all kind of bullshit. So it is choice at the end of the day, I think a lot of us ended up with this white flour grain and this white rice, but we forgot about West African fonio. We forgot about Ethiopian teff. You know what I'm saying? We forgot about quinoa, which is from Peru, the original quinoa. There's a lot of grains we don't even tap into, and they're in the specialty aisle of the store. If we just look. And my favorite, the amaranth, which was what the Native Americans used as their grain when they made the sweetbread before the hybridized white bleach flour.
I just looked at a world map of obesity, and Japan is 6%, and you'd be hard pressed to find anything lower than that. You just would. 6% for a advanced country. Yeah.
They also live the oldest, right? Simon, they're like longevity wise.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting study about longevity, communities, and they call. I watched a documentary, it's about blue zones, and Japan is one of those. It's not just about the diet, that is part of it, but it's also about community. And having a sense of purpose, which is like a difficult thing to pin down, but Japan,
I'm gonna say Okinawa.
6% obesity, and UK is 27. There's some of the healthiest people.
One of the highest.
Well, it's 42. I didn't
want to say. I just wanted to jump in because someone keeps saying enriched flour.
Simon, sorry to interrupt. Can I talk to the moderators here? May I talk to moderators here, please?
You can wait till after I'm done.
Because the room's topic is something else, and you guys are talking about nutrition.
Okay,
I understand that. But I would like to hear from the moderators what exactly we're talking about. And Pepe, if you don't, please kick this Aryan out of this room.
Oh, so you want to kick people out of here? You want to? Yeah, goodbye, girl.
Aryan, he is sitting in the audience.
Who cares? Why are you worried about it? You would interrupt a conversation to go worry about your pet.
No, I'm worried about the chat room, as obviously you guys are not it. And an IRG member, and you guys don't
America, those people can.
Yeah, they live there. You guys let them.
Iran. He's literally.
Good, let them live in land.
Yes, and here's the beauty of it. Is I'm in America.
So I just want to go to people who talk about enriched flour. Like I don't know if you actually know what enriched flour really is or how white flour can be. So first off, it wasn't white. Actually, we learned it from the Syrians, Iranians. They used to do that. They're the ones that came up with the process for that. Romans further refined it, and it's just removing certain components of flour so that it actually turns through. Much how you remove tannins from acorns to make flour. If you don't know that, acorn flour is fucking amazing. It's really great. You just gotta let that stream wash those tannins out. But you gotta get rid of the germ, and basically what that. And a lot of your nutrients were in there, but since people don't like that, what ended up happening is that we have to make, guess what? We have to put, something back in there. So that's where those nutrients are actually added back in after the, quote, sifting process and removal of what was originally there. But you wouldn't know that because most people just think enriched flour has a whole bunch of chemicals on it, which, yes, to a point, some of them do. But at the end, if you really want a true flour, it's not hard to make. You just have to suffer with the fact that it's not going to be white and it's going to have a very vastly different taste. And your bread's not going to be soft. It's not going to be like that. Oh, I can smear jam on it. It doesn't work that way. So, I mean, you got a choice.
The reason why, and you're right, Brad, and the reason why I keep bringing up this specific flour is because it was a specific strain, right? So you have certain flours all over the world. Like in Egypt, you had, they call it einkorn, E-I-N-K-O-R-N. In other parts of the world, you have rye. These are all like more so, even though they've been cultivated by man up until a certain point where and then they got cultivated by factories and whatnot, they're a lot closer to their original source than this actual specific strain of white flour that's being sold in stores.
It wasn't European, you understand that? Because we actually didn't know that recipe until guess what? Landed on shores and said, oh, that's how you do it. And we learned it from Egyptians and Iraqis who taught it down into Africa, and we learned it from Africans. So you understand that white man wasn't there. Now the process has been modernized, but we didn't learn those methodologies because Egypt, the Crescent region, was the one that developed it and taught
you. Still had a specific strain, is what I'm saying. You had a certain strain, like a marijuana strain. You can trace it back to its original roots. You guys have a strain of wheat that you were doing so much to that it eventually it became like toxic, and to the point now where we have to have gluten-free and at the same time glutinous breads, whereas like the Ethiopians, right, their flour or their bread was made out of teff, which naturally no gluten in it, 100% no gluten, full of iron. You get what I'm saying? Rye, same thing. Not a lot of gluten in the original rye. Maybe like 1 to 5%. The strain that you guys use now in the stores is full of gluten. But
not to disparage people that eat healthy, but how many of you, like, if you ever go to these health food cafes, notice that the people don't look so good that are sitting there? I always go in and I'll think, okay, everyone's going to be like super fit and not fat, and they end up like I'm thinking, well, is what they're serving in these health food places like full of something that's high caloric? Because these people are not skinny.
Those health food places are more of a joke. It's more like people literally will go and eat at these stores, and Sword and I are like dead on in this one. I think we were that. And you go and get your Ozempic shot and go, I'm doing so good. I'm eating at Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, or cream of some young guy's restaurant that promises me 1 calorie per meal. And you really can't do that. It's your sedentary lifestyle. You may go to the gym, but gym muscle isn't real muscle. We all know that. You're not really putting your body under stressors of the environment. You're not laboring like we sit for mostly 8 hours a day in AC. You're not exposed to the elements. You rarely, if it's raining, will even go outside and say, you know what, I'll go out on an adventure. I ain't in a rainstorm or snow. or freaking dense fog. You're just not, and you're fat because the body is designed. It's a perfect design to survive on a variety of different types of diets. And somehow or another, we've basically modernized the world, terraformed it to make like the people in the Disney movie WALL-E.
Yeah, and also we live in cities, don't we? Which, you know, what you're describing as a better way of living your life, it's not that simple, is it, when you live in a city?
But it is. Like, you know what?
Wow, yeah.
I did. I now live in Houston City, which I'm despising, but I'm only down here until I find which will probably be in the North End or out in Hill Country. But when I look on this and I say this, every single person on here is somehow magically a millionaire. That you all drive Bugattis, you all have Lexus, you guys all have Rolexes. Your 401ks are based on half of the shit that I hear around here. Some of you are so wealthy and so knowledgeable, but yet you eat like shit. But you have the capabilities of saying, hey, you know what? I'm gonna go to a farmer's market. I'm gonna go look at what these are. I'm gonna go buy. Some of you live in the Northeast. You have Amish, you have Mennonites. You have these groups of people that are out there just regularly doing nothing. They're not putting chemicals on their farms. You can go buy from them. You can even go buy the jams and the pies. They're healthier. They're still loaded with sugar, but they're still nice. You could go buy stuff like that. You could go hunt your own. Imagine what woman to you men. Imagine how proud your woman would be when you came home and you're like, dude, I got a 10-point buck here. We've got meat. I have to go buy a capability of having a fucking freezer in your 4-car garage right next to your Porsches to be able to stock for the winter. For me, you could eat game meat, which is lean, which tastes amazing. Toss some cranberries in it, some dried ones, fucking go out, add blueberries, mash that up, put a little bit of salt on it, boom, you're done. It tastes amazing. Go get a couple rabbits. Don't eat rabbit religiously, it'll kill you. But I mean, you've got fish. You have so many different areas, and you terraformed it so much that hey, you know, you could do this, and you could have it. Your women would be happy for you guys. You'd be like, man, woo, you look like this. Yeah, right. Be balling like, honey, here, I brought home 10 fucking 50-pound fucking salmon right here. We've got enough to get us. Like, man, that would be.
I could just imagine my wife's face if I walked in the door with the deer on my back and go, yeah, put that in the pot, baby. And you know, she'd look at me as if I was like, I take your point, and I'm laughing at myself saying this. But
well, I get that same reaction when I show with the Whole Foods sea bass. the house erupts
and Brad, your body will perform better as well. So she gonna be happy about that too.
Oh yeah, check out the called Miraquama.
Yeah, you guys won't be shitting on the toilet for a half hour. I love it when I go meet some of you guys off a clubhouse and I actually get to see it. Like, I do enjoy meeting you guys, so I'm not knocking it. But I love when the fact is like we'll hang out for like a week or a weekend and I have to sit there and wait for you to take your 30 to 45 minute shit and you're like grunting in there like you're giving birth to a fucking child. Like I've heard, like my wife didn't make as much noise giving birth to my daughters as you guys do. We're sitting there trying to get out the meal you ate last night because I watch. You'll eat 5 times what I eat, and I'm like, dude, I can't do that shit. No. Like we're good, man. We're okay.
Brad, come visit me in Spring Branch.
I don't know.
To a movable feast.
You know, I don't eat that much, man. It's gonna fit in the palm of my hand, and I have big hands, but that's about the extent of what I eat, and then I'm good. I'm a cheap date, man. You're gonna be like, damn, he ordered off the kids menu. And you're
Way to
like,
go.
right? Passed on all this other shit. He just ate the meat and the vegetables and didn't use any. He was like, plain, no seasonings, nothing.
Well, it should be a lot of fun at the buffets here in Vegas. Let me just say, be a little disappointing.
I've been meaning to ask you this. What do you think of the oral arguments?
Lots to say about it. I mean, I'm gonna hijack the room. I mean, we got into this the other day in the room. I mean, I have my prediction on why I think it's gonna be a 7-2 verdict, but that's just my thought. I mean, are we putting on markets? I have not. Are we betting this?
We're betting $1. Woman, $1.
Marshall, you putting money on this one too? Am I the only one that thinks that? Okay, gambling's not a sin. It's okay once in a while. So what do you think?
I think it's 6-3 Kagan, Samoa, Thomas Brown Jackson, then Amy Coney Barrett, Petrus Roberts, and Gorsuch.
You're going 6-3. I'm going 7-2.
I'm done. Jackson. I'll bet $1.
On this, all right, Brad. Where are you going?
I'm thinking Trump gets away with it. I think they actually come out on top with it. And then they're going to force Congress to actually legislate and actually have to put forth an amendment. And I think Roberts gets to skate away. It is true that Congress did not legislate for this and that it's not clearly defined under the legislation, especially when it comes to domicile.
Abby, let me ask you this. What do you think it's going to be hinged on?
I mean, I just don't think they proved. I mean, just in terms of going on the oral arguments and listening to the justices and their questioning, I think that they didn't present a situation where it would. I mean, obviously, it would never void out anything else, but I didn't think it presented that wasn't the intent. They have a problem proving intent of non-domicile.
You're saying right now
I don't know. I
just the same thing when the Dobbs decision was brought up. Anyway.
I could be wrong. Hey guys, I could be wrong. I'm in the final four. Ask Beaver how bad somebody.
I have UConn. I still have UConn. But I'm telling you, like at that time, people were like, "Oh my God, they didn't do such a great job." And Trump still came out with it and was able to revert it to the state. So I'm going to take the wager. I think it's a coin flip either way. And I don't think you're wrong in your assessment because we never know what this
I think Gorsuch, I just think doesn't rule in Trump's favor on this. And he gets stuck on the Native American thing. If you noticed, he always does. And counsel was not prepared for that, for those questions, and should have been. But I also thought Ketanji, I've seen it all the time. Ketanji Brown's question about Japan and like getting your wallet stolen or whatever the hell that was. It was just insane. Just really not scholarly.
Dumbest SCOTUS ever. By far.
Dumbest.
I mean, she's
dumb. Yeah, I mean the questions and her opinions are not based in law. They're based in like activism and
I was just about to ask you about that. But
yeah, I mean, look at the last one. What case was it? Amy Coney Barrett had to like call her out for the stupidity in her opinion.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I mean,
she was brilliant.
I was about to say I don't remember anybody referring to her as dumb. She was always left, but this woman is. I mean, I think Amy Coney Barrett's even kind of like chastised her.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
That's okay. Well,
chastised is a better word than I use, but yeah, she did. I don't know. I don't see the arguments being strong enough constitutionally. I mean, I'm not taking an opinion that I wish they weren't or they were. Just listening to the justices. I don't know, Marshall, you asked me the question. What was your takeaway? Marshall.
Well, let me ask.
Marshall, what Was your takeaway the same? I mean,
Something similar. I mean, I didn't think the government proved their case. I thought the ACLU get presented badly with common law.
yes.
The domicile was not even under common law. There's an instance where she and Justice Alito were arguing. Justice Alito asked her a question about domicile. She said, no, it's not domicile. And then Kentucky Brown Jackson stepped in and said, no. In fact, in this case, I guess it was Juan Kimmark, I think, that there had been issues of domicile a bunch of times in the decision. And then the advocate for the ACLU said, oh, yes, I agree with you. So I thought she presented badly.
Right.
But I thought she presented better.
I didn't think she was good at all. I mean, I actually thought that the Solicitor General handled case law and citations excellently. Like, I think he was, when you have an appellate argument, I mean, you have to be ready to jump out with the case law citation. He was really good with that. I mean, the one area he wasn't prepared, but he was prepared on case law. I didn't think she was.
So let me ask y'all this.
Like 2 or 3 cases the whole time.
I know. I mean, which was like what? Do you think they used her for another reason? I mean, I didn't understand that. She didn't seem like.
No, I mean, you would think that you would have 3 points to prove each key point you were making, right? So you'd have a bunch of different court cases rather than like 3.
So let me.
It's such a gimme, this case, because if anything, this Supreme Court is going to go literal. When in doubt, they're going to go with the letter of the Constitution. And the Constitution is so clear on this that trying to argue original intent, I think, is...
So I said this in I'm so redundant. I'm redundant on this, but on any of these cases, you have to look at the legislative intent. You have to look at what was happening and what was behind how something was written, and you have that with the 14th Amendment. I was talking about that guy Howard out of Michigan, who was the drafter of that section with respect to jurisdiction thereof, and you would go back normally and look at legislative intent, look at what was happening at Congress, what was presented in Congress, speeches on the floor, what was in the congressional record at the time. Just you'd have to examine all of it when you look at intent. I mean, that's normally how you would look to try to rip something apart or support.
So that's what I was about to ask.
Go ahead.
Only if the language is unclear. I mean, like Second Amendment, we're expecting a literal.
So look at that. I'm sorry, Stuart was asking something.
Right?
Yeah, I was going to ask, and this could probably tie into Normal's question. Do the Supreme Court justices actually go and read these things, or do they just kind of hear what's being said and make a decision based upon what's being said?
Briefed. They're reviewing the briefs. Their staff. They have a lot significant work for them, and they review the briefs. And then you also have something called amicus briefs, which translates to friends of the court. And it will be another entity will file a brief in support of a position if it helps them in their world. So you'll have this who filed the amicus briefs. I haven't read it enough about the case to know.
So if they go back and read all of the sources, because he put a lot of sources in his brief.
I mean, all the case law you're talking about? They'll read all the case law, absolutely. I mean, they personally, they'll have the law clerks will read it, and then the law clerks will brief. We brief cases, so they'll brief the cases, do like a summarization of the cases that were used to support the position, and then they'll give that to the justice to review. But yeah, the justices are reading all the time. That's why you won't get a decision till June?
Yeah. So what's interesting, so like in the cases and some of the books that Bauer had put forth, I had read some of those books before, and I was like, oh, okay, it's slam dunk. Because in some of these books written by these legal professionals, you know, 1700s, they're literally saying the kid gets their domicile status from the parent. They're literally saying it as clean as that. So I wonder, like, if they have this information of no complexity, it just says what it says. The only way I can see them ruling against it is some type of malicious, you know, like I can't see them ruling against it if they have it literally right in their face saying what it says. So what are your, you know, you have what I have, so what other contributing factors kind of go into these things other than just the documentation?
Stare decisis, for one thing.
Say the word out of my mouth. Go on.
I know, stare is for one thing, which is fancy Latin for precedent. I mean, I didn't see Dobbs coming. I said, there's no way they may not like the decision of Roe, but they're not, but stare decisis is precedent. I mean, the country has been operating with one interpretation of the Constitution for this many years, whatever it was, 50. The same thing is true with this decision. We've been operating with this interpretation for some time, that it would be an undue, well, what the justification of stare decisis, maybe you know, Abby, that would place an undue burden, shall we say, on people who are operating with this one definition, even prospectively, as the Attorney General made clear, meaning looking into the future.
I can Google this. I don't know the amount
It's like
of
100
cases.
years, right?
Yeah, but there's how many cases have actually been completely overturned by the Supreme Court? Obviously, the most famous one was Dred Scott.
I mean, as soon as after Dred Scott, you can like count it on one hand, right? Like,
Yeah, the Coromanzo,
Ferguson, you know.
yeah, but essentially, it's not common that we so this would be one. This.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we did. I mean, the Chevron one is.
I think you and I drift apart. I think Roberts is actually excited for cases like this in order to put more. I think his overall goal is to reform and draw back the Supreme Court to be what it was originally founded for, not to be the third legislative, I guess, well it is, but not the legislation is basically what he's trying to do. And I think a lot of the justices agree with it on most of the conservative side. They're like, Congress needs to do this, not the Supreme Court. You can't just say, hey, here's a law, and we're going to give this broad, wide-opening interpretation and allow whatever to happen. No, you need to be very specific. You need to follow the parameters of the Constitution and be able to, in effect, make those kind of changes.
So what type of...
Thanks, Norm. I think. I don't know what you sent me, but it's a coin thing.
Well,
so Normal, you may be able to answer this. What does it take to...
Sorry, that's silly. Go ahead, Sword.
What does it... I think, what does it take to overturn precedent that has already been set? Because I think, like, I'm going to pull up a screenshot here to showcase why I'm asking this question, because theoretically, this should get overturned, but, you know, like, is it possible to rule against Trump just because precedent was set and not observe if the president that set was actually incorrect?
I'm sorry, I took a phone call. What did you ask for?
What's the justification for overruling precedent?
Yeah. And is it possible to... Well, go ahead.
It's a really good question. question, and the examples that we gave are really good examples to think about. So, in the situation of Plessy versus Ferguson being overturned by Brown versus Board of Education is an example of the shift and the change of the country and the direction of the country, and to overrule segregation and the country and the policies of the country that were changing, the mores of the country that were changing. So, I mean, it can happen. The same thing with of the Japanese and the Korematsu case. I mean, when it becomes either the policy is so shocking to how the nation now has its going forward and its directions. Gay marriage is an example of that. So it would be more of I'm going to say the cultural trends, and I'm probably not saying this in the right legal ease to say it properly, but that's kind of when that happens, when there's a shift in nation. Does that make sense?
Gotcha. Yep.
Now,
and my second. Okay.
Okay, I'm just going to add, similar to Abby, I think they're constantly trying to make the right decision for the good of the nation, which is like variation of what Abby said, and also for the good of the institution, which is, I think, obviously Justice Roberts' big mission, especially, again, you can argue with me if you wish, to defend it against Trump, who, unlike other presidents, has felt quite free to criticize the justices whenever he feels like it. Others have done it a little. Whenever other people do, Trump does it even more. So I don't know if you heard this when he started talking about the justices. Even when you appoint them, sometimes you feel like they can go against you. Go figure.
Tongue in cheek.
Yeah, he does it in a comical way, which I give him credit for. He said, oh yeah, the Democrats, they're always, his equivalent of on code. They always vote together. But the Republicans, they'll sometimes go against you, even if you appointed them. It was pretty funny, I have to say. He's always funny. Even in his, his unitary executive approach to the office. Meaning the consolidation.
Say it again, Marshall.
He thinks the executive is too powerful. So.
Oh, okay.
It's understandable, Marshall, because the whole point.
I think executives.
I think you might be tired of.
The whole magic of our system is the checks and the balances. This is what the balance of powers, and B, the respect for our institutions and documents. Like, Russia, for example, has a constitution, but they ignore it. So it's great that they have a nice constitution, but it doesn't do much good. So this is, I think, the strength of our democracy is our respect for our documents and our institutions, including separation of powers. So, I think it's terrific that sometimes the Supreme Court will do what they feel is right rather than what they think that the person who appointed them would want them to do,
Gotcha. And from a Supreme Court justice perspective, is it possible for them to rule against Trump just on the premise that precedent has already been set? Is that a possibility?
This is a justification.
Yes, they can say that. They can say the court has decided something. This is our answer. Not overturn precedent.
But on the other hand, they could also just not take the case, right? In the first place. They could have chosen that. Because of stare decisis. Like, let's not waste our time. This is already written. So they must have decided that this was worth hearing. maybe to put a check, maybe to give Trump a little message. We're going to see. I mean, I'm predicting, but like I think Viking said, you can't predict what Trump is going to say or do. I mean, I'm sorry, you can't predict what the Supreme Court is going to say or do. Or Trump.
One thing that I wish he would have brought up when it comes to defending the fact that the Americans decided to adopt a different version of common law was in the British common law. Once you became a citizen, you couldn't expatriate. Versus here in America, the day before the 14th Amendment, they passed the Expatriation Act. If he would have brought that up, I think that would have drove even further to demonstrate that, you know, as the system was getting set up over here, they didn't fully adopt the full concept of British law. Is that they took what they had because the colonies were all set up under common law. But then once they broke away, they had their own rendition where they accepted some practices of Roman civil law. I think if he would have drove that point home to get the opposing party off of the canned response of, well, it's British common law, it's British common law, I think it would have drove it home a little bit further.
That's interesting. It's an interesting perspective.
Now, one more question I have, because when the Miss Wong, the lady who was opposing Trump's point of perspective, it seemed like the Supreme Court justices were leading her with their talking points. So, like, what is is there a format for how these things should go? The questions that was being drilled with versus the conversation or the leading conversation that Wang experienced was like different.
It's funny that you saw that. Going to go, and that's also the positions. I mean, the judge isn't supposed to make your case for you, but in an appellate, you know, you can have the justices really pull you in a direction they're struggling, and they preconceived a gift or a gimme. Like they'll help along. I mean, you see it in court also. Generally, you know, a judge is not supposed to be doing the questioning, but sometimes you'll see a judge interfering and you know, directing the witness in a better direction than their own lawyer is doing. So yeah, is there a formula for it? I mean, they're supposed to come in very unbiased, but you could see. I mean, I felt that was going on. I mean, I see that with the liberal justices. I mean, definitely saw that, but. I don't know. Is this the first time you listened to an oral argument?
No, I've listened to, I think, maybe, I listened to oral argument. I listened to quite a few, but I just started it. So this has been like year two.
When they're hearing a case.
Yeah, I was actually planning on going to this one, but when I heard about the crowds and stuff, and there was only like 50 seats or 50 tickets or something like that, I was like, yeah, I ain't wasting my time.
Oh, yeah, obviously you have to go to one that's not like a major, you know, news issue. But, you know, if you're just hearing the oral arguments on a case, it's just interesting to watch it. And usually you don't see Thomas too engaged in the questioning.
Hello.
All right, so I just PTR'd books that Bauer put in his brief, and this is one of those. This is the reason why I was asking my question, because it literally just says it. You know, the kid, it's on the domicile status of the parent. And the reason why is because the kid can't govern themselves. So they don't even have a legal capacity to establish domicile. So therefore, they would inherit it from their parent, and their parent would inherit it. And their parent would inherit it essentially from their place of origin, their parent, so on and so forth. And they cite cases. One which was interesting. There was a domicile case that Henry Adams was Charles I's wife, where she was France, but when she got married to Charles I, then she took on the domicile status of her husband. And when he ended up, of course, dying, and she went back to France, her estate was up for question. So now that kind of led me to the perspective of, what were like the national laws for each nation to determine, like, why were people fighting so hard for it, But that's, my own personal research history. But it'll be interesting to see, like, if they actually go in and read, all of the sources that Bauer and his team put forth. If that's the process, I'm anxious to see what the outcome is, because I don't see how you can read that and side with Wang, who the only thing she could generally say was British common law and Wong Kim Ark. And she couldn't cite the explicitly stated things, like how you mentioned Bauer and how he was able to say, this is what they said out of their mouth. So yeah. But I guess we'll see.
Is not mentioned in the 14th Amendment.
It's not. But Bauer was making a claim that the term reside.
Contentious, or it says wherein they reside.
Right. Yeah.
So one thing that I know that Justice Scalia did do was he had dictionaries from the period that the law was written. So we could look up reside. I don't have a dictionary from 1866 or whatever it was. But I do have a little magic phone in my hand. To dwell permanently or for a considerable. So that's interesting. That's what reside means now. I don't know what it meant then. So maybe, the person would have to be here for a year, say. I don't know. What's a considerable amount of time?
You contemplated intent to look at.
Yeah, we were talking. That's true.
The legislative intent by Bingham and Laura, I can't remember the second name.
Howard.
One had a universality idea that everybody's covered, and I think one did not. Like they had two different ideas, I recall correctly, but one of the pieces of legislative intent was that it should be applied universally.
Let's see, another thing that kind of brings chicken bone into the argument was another book that they cited was Supreme Court Justice Henry Brennan, where he wrote a book on the 14th Amendment in 1901. And one of the things that he highlighted was that to be a federal citizen, you would have had to have been a citizen first. So there's no way that an illegal alien, it's literally an illegal alien. They have no citizenship status here. And that was a case that he was driving in his book. So evidence is so strong. First time hearing this, which, in all fairness, evidence leans more toward Bauer's perspective with all of the authors and all of the cases they cite.
So you're in agreement with me on them overturning the current precedent, right?
I hope they do, but if they can just say, hey, precedent has already been set, then that doesn't give me any gleam of hope. Because they can just say, fuck it,
One of the things, I think you just said this, on English common law. The Kavanaugh, I think, asked a question, someone correct me on this, or made a comment, because they brought up other countries not having it. American law and American jurisprudence and other countries are irrelevant, or some comment like that. Like he shut that down.
Like he said, it's the same Constitution.
Yeah. That was another one, Sword. That was a pretty good quip right back at him. Different times, same Constitution.
It was like a stone cold look too.
Oh, I wasn't watching, I was only listening. But I noticed that, that like, you can't shoot.
Breaking up
Just have to, I was saying you can't shoot back a wisecrack at the Supreme Court. You have to remain respectful.
One where I was thinking about your point of when they're trying to help you with your argument. In the Harvard Asian case that were given to Counsel for the Asian community that was arguing, I thought from the conservative justices that argument, and they were reinforcing things he was saying. There wasn't you didn't hear the pushback. I mean, that one I remember thinking, oh, they nailed this. They've got this. And I forget what the breakdown, if that was a 6-3 or not.
Well,
but you can tell.
You got gifts on both sides of this to a certain extent, and then you've got like almost like pummeling questions. I get what you say about the Native American, and yeah, there's some parts about that, but I don't know. Kavanaugh, it's just too. That's why I'm only betting into it with you guys.
You're a big spender here, Brad.
This is why I have money, because I don't spend it.
After the hearings, dude.
I think Kavanaugh, Alito, and Thomas are blocked. Kavanaugh side, we know from the notch, and Tony Barrett in particular on Native American affairs side with the more liberals on the court, and the Chief Justices tend to side over the last several decisions more with liberal justices rather than with conservative justices, at least on bigger issues. I'm sure on smaller cases they're like 8-0, 9, they're like 8-1, 9-0, that kind of stuff.
But I think isn't Gorsuch, do you remember that case, and this is why I'm at, why he really zeroes in on Native Americans, that case that was the Native Americans wanted water rights.
It's the California one against the strip mining that's going on for lithium out west, and they interfered on their tribal lands to take water. That occurred under Biden, didn't it?
Yeah, was that California or Arizona that sued? I thought it was Arizona that sued on that. I could be wrong.
I thought it was California, and then there's the water rights that occurred with California and this in lower states too. So like they both kind of had impacts on it.
I think he sided with the liberals on that, or did he write the opinion against the Native American?
Sided with him. Gorsuch has made some liberal opinions. He's the first Trump appointee, as I recall.
Well, he's a textualist. He's not a strict originalist like Lita. At least as I understand textualism, more often than not, is what the words on the page read. Now, yes, you take into account, as I understand it, original legislative intent, what the page reads.
That's an interesting distinction.
I also think too, like the courts are like Kavanaugh doesn't seem to. Again, I go back to the point where Congress is trying to fight this in the courts, and they're not looking to make any kind of actual legislation. They're not willing to reform. And I think I could see Barrett and Kavanaugh just saying, hey, you know what? no, this does need to be redefined in the courts. They need to pass this legislation, and they need to have an immigration bill or an amendment to propose where they get 2/3 states. I don't know if that'll work, but I mean, they did it with odds. They did it with Chevron deference, right? They kicked it right back to Congress, and they said, hey, you didn't freaking define it. That's your problem, not the court's problem.
That happened? Yeah. I tend to think that despite all the domiciliary arguments, like the jurisdiction thereof is clearly, I think it's fairly clear. At least, like, as somebody who's both reads things and is curious about their original meaning when the legislation and the amendments were written, but also somebody who's like reads the page and goes, well, the page says this, not. If it had said that, if it had meant to have a kid here and they become a citizen, well, the founders probably would have said that. And at least if we look at the legislative intent of that part of the 14th Amendment, there was one of the framers, at the very least, if not both, who believed in universality of citizenship. You're born in America, they're citizen, which would mean that people are reinterpreting the 14th Amendment from what the framers was, right? But I acknowledge your point that it could happen. So absolutely.
I didn't think the guy in Michigan, I didn't think that was his intent. I thought his intent was the opposite. So that's interesting that you say that.
And here's the other thing. I'm sick and tired of Black Americans not having any part of it. Like, they lost out on civil rights. They had to give it up to everybody else. Like, we can have something that just goes to Black Americans. It's perfectly fine. We'll be okay. Tongue in cheek, though.
So I guess from this point forward, like from a process perspective, and this goes to Abby or anyone who understands like the process. So I guess at this point, all data has been submitted. There's nothing else to submit. It's kind of just a review process from here on out. Is that
it's a review and a discussion right now. That everything has been said, so that's it. There's nothing more. We just wait till June or July to see when this decision comes to a head.
This is what I think right here. I feel like the U.S. going to take over Iran, man. That's how I feel, man.
We appreciate you telling us how you feel, sister.
Thank you.
What were you saying, Abby?
So, I mean, it's...
Wait, that was a girl? I thought that was a young kid. Holy shit.
So all the
I'm a boy, man.
Oh, my bad, brother. You gotta go.
Yeah, you're a little kid.
Fuck Iran. I don't get no fuck.
Such a deep, intellectual, philosophical thinker.
So that all the briefs are in. I did check. I want to take a minute to look at what amicus brief stuff on any. So now they said they meet. The justices meet, discuss, go back and forth with each other, and they review what briefed and what information in front of them, and they'll rule. But a lot of the rulings, like the stuff that they're hearing, they come at 1 week in June. Like we get slammed with a bunch of rulings on.
What do you think's going to do the
majority or the minority? The minority, I think, will be probably. I mean, again, I think they lose. So I think the minority might be Alito on that, and the majority. Interesting. It could even be. It could be maybe a liberal with a concurring, or with Barrett concurring. I don't know, something like that. Unless they have Barrett. Now, you're going to make me bet on who's writing it. That's like going into a prop bet on, this.
Okay, we could do another $1. It's fine. $2. It's a little rich, but I mean, I can do it.
Yeah.
I know, right? But we can't do pennies anymore. They don't make them anymore. It's for the majority, and Trump wins, and on that, and I think the minority will be Jackson.
I think Roberts is a wimp. I don't think he does. I don't think he. unless he writes the majority for them losing, but I don't know. It's possible he writes majority, but I don't think it's with.
Right. Did you see in June they're going to be putting?
Yeah, I heard that.
The left, they're going to lose their mind.
That stupid shit doesn't concern me.
It's constant control.
How did you say 100? You sounded like.
What's that?
The way you just said 100.
I don't know. I guess we say the same thing in really Kentucky since.
You said 100.
Yeah, 100. Philly's not the only one that uses certain words out here, I guess. Yeah, they're supposed to be coming out with a gold coin and come out with a new silver dollar coin. It's supposed to have Trump's face on. That's supposed to be by the end of the year. But all U.S. currency is going to have his signature on it. That's going to be so excited to watch all the TikToks of the liberals crying, screaming, and
Trump Ray syndrome is about to be crazy.
oh, bro, they're going to be like, do not use this money. It has this Nazi signature.
Abby, what's left on the docket here? Isn't there, did the Cook one go through? Because we've got Cook, you got Slaughter, and then you got Watson versus the RNC, and I think on my deck is the Gnome one. I forget who that was. And then, yeah, the ice one. And then, what was it? The Havana Dock and Caribbean will be an interesting one too as well. But I mean, you've got the gun ownership case, whether banning gun ownership for drug users violates the Second Amendment. That'll be an interesting case to see. I just know that it was up there. It's probably some southern state. I mean, I'm just gonna be honest.
Yeah, Brent, you can come to Texas where it's still $2.90 and we're not a communist state and we don't have to pay extreme taxes like New York.
Oh, I'm sorry, I just pulled it up. I think it's from New York.
I'm glad that Mamdani is mayor because he's going to make everything cheaper by scaring everybody off.
You know what taxes have raised? It just raised taxes again.
Scare everybody away. I want to live in New York. It's fun.
You can't because you can't even purchase the property because you have to
just give it a year or two. Maybe you should have spent that money on spilled liquor from bars from one side of the world to another.
I just like him. It is just personal. Like I thought he was retarded to begin with, but when that young baby was just shot through the, or this young little fucking kid was shot, because God forbid we actually put away criminals anymore in this country. But this kid was shot right through a corner store, right into the stroller, and my dummy goes up there and gives this like, we just need to crack down on all this stuff and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, you're the one that ran on fucking killing police officers ran on removing all this shit and making everything free. What did you think was gonna fucking happen?
Well, I think Mamdani is just upset that he didn't get accepted into the New World Order.
Someone ought to push him in front of the fucking train.
I was block walking today, and there was this old man. He was like a Republican who used to listen to my dad, and was telling me politicians were all corrupt, and like my congresswoman, the woman I worked for, couldn't do anything. And then he goes, you know what? Vance needs to, take care of business. Get along with the CIA, get a long-range sniper, and take his ass out. I was flabbergasted. I was like, we're just like plainly advocating for capping the executive. Interesting. Something I never thought I would hear.
Yo, Abby, was Brent actually a district court judge, or did he just work for the district court judge? Because I heard two different stories. Brent?
No, different. Brent.
Yeah, Brent, the one.
Yeah, after the judge.
He claimed that he was a district court judge.
No, that's Brent.
Oh, Brent. Okay. I didn't know if he actually was or not. Because I heard somebody like dragging him, like telling him that he actually wasn't a dude.
We got somebody named Sean in this room. Is your last name Michaels? No?
What?
Okay.
Yeah, I don't get that either.
I guess you guys never had a childhood.
Oh, are you talking about that wrestler guy? Oh. Yeah, we weren't allowed to watch a lot of that.
Yeah, I stopped watching that when I was like 8 years old, and I found out it was all state.
It was a lot of fun, though. A lot of childhood memories.
Oh, yeah.
I remember Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant and Roddy Piper and them, but, I mean, like, we were briefly allowed to watch it, and then people looked at us and said, way too much violence. You can't watch it.
Mondani, that's way too much violence.
What did you think about Mandani and more assaulted by the MAGA protesters and would-be drama terrorists?
Yeah, we can't hear you, Monica. You're in the Matrix.
Oh, Pepe, can you?
We couldn't hear you. I did think it was funny.
Pepe can translate what's happening.
Oh my God, it's Monica.
We heard. To any of like the real legal pundits on this, on that case, just the legal
They're split down.
like what are they saying? Like what's the guy Charlie that's on Fox?
He's saying that he agrees with overturning it, but he doesn't know if they put it, like they're basically just guessing. It's all, everybody doesn't know. It's all up in the air. Some people say they didn't prove the case. It's clearly evident, just depending on who you borrow it. So, I mean, it's, I don't know, it's all over the map.
Did you see those? So look, those two terrorists, like I guess they're like fell off that through the failed.
Oh, the ones in Philly. The guys from Bucks County, Philly.
That did it in New York in front of Donnie.
Yeah, the Turkish guys.
Yeah, so I remember he goes, he gives like this, it's unfortunate, and you know, we need to come together as a community. Then there was some like, I don't know, some schizo that wanted to kill, like, assassinate this pro-Palestinian woman, and like his tweet about that person who wanted to do that was like totally different. He used a whole bunch of loaded language. I just thought it was funny that his
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. It was there was a guy from the JDL that had a plot to go after.
Still around.
Yeah, well, not exactly, not really, but the people that believe in the ideology. But and I know exactly what you're saying, Pepe. He was completely like mortified by it. But the two guys that almost blew up, you know, a good section of Manhattan, he dismissed as like fortunate.
Yeah, it was bullshit.
So going back, I'm going to jump off. Okay, Charlie, everyone's guessing. And what are they saying on? I don't watch CNN, so anyone watch that?
I follow the, like, just quick snippets of it, so I didn't watch them, like, full extent, but they're all over the map, too. Like, they're arguing, like, I don't know if we proved our case, and they're like, and they're already prepping for the, you know, Trump has installed fascists and, xenophobic justices onto the bench, so, of course, this is like, going to work.
I don't think that's going to happen with Trump. Is Weiss and them already in control of it?
Not of the Supreme Court.
No, CNN.
No, not yet. I don't think so. I mean, I mean, I'm just curious what other legal pundits. They have some pretty bright people that come on there. So, but I haven't read any of it and I haven't listened. So it's just curious. I don't think they took over yet. When did that deal go through?
I thought it did. And so, like, a bunch of the left is saying that they're gonna I guess, investigate once they have power, because it seems like an illegal monopoly, or I don't know.
How is her getting in charge of?
Ellison, he just bought a shit ton of it.
Yeah, but I mean, still, they weren't too concerned about it with Twitter. They weren't too concerned about it with what's his name, Bezos?
He ended up buying TikTok and
That's Musk.
Pepe, those were the days when there's 3 networks. I mean, there's so many networks now. Then how do you have
So Larry Ellison.
He's pro. Ellison, I don't even know that he's. I don't even know if
his son David has the control.
Yeah, Larry bought TikTok and then David bought Warner Brothers, HBO, CNN.
But I mean, they don't. I don't know what they politically where they're at, but they're obviously they really like Trump right now.
Republicans.
So. Okay.
But Barry Weiss is in the middle, by the way.
She's a centrist, but she's
a centrist. I mean, she's got it.
But she's somebody who I think would also. I think she's also a fan of Trump, for obvious reasons too.
I've seen stuff when she went right after him, so, and definitely with respect to gay rights and stuff, I mean, she's got,
Did she leave her husband for a woman?
No, she's been married to Nelly for quite some time, and they had babies together. The woman that she's married to, she's is brilliant. They had babies together, the two of them. I mean, did they have to get sperm from someone, I assume? I don't know. You guys can figure that one out. Wait,
Well, in other words, you would have to be when you work together, it's like you mix their.
Wait, hold on, guys. Am I crazy? Did we have someone in a room, in the last 48 hours? Because sometimes I'm in my sleep when I'm listening to this. That said that you can have babies without a man. It was the Iceland lady.
Oh, yeah, the Icelandic lady last night.